for us to go live. Oh. This morning on our Breakfast Club, let's talk about this World Cup thing.
CEO takes a nap 2 hours late for meeting.
How to get your kids better grades. They can replace that CEO.
um, Another CEO, media needs to change labels given to women.
How to turn your car into a cruise missile or something like that.
Why time slows down when we're afraid, speeds up as we age, and gets warped on vacation.
Time dilation. All that.
Yes, I know. I knew you'd like that one.
All that plus recommendations coming up next.
Go for it.
Music, music, music! Hey everybody, welcome to our Breakfast Club. This is episode 12. That's right, after we're done with this, we'll have an even dozen for your listening pleasure. This is June 25th, 2014, and as always, I am your host, Curt Achberger.
And I'm Chandra Achberger.
And let's jump into the stories. Chandra, take it away.
So, if you haven't heard already, CEO Marissa Mayer was late, about 2 hours late for a meeting in Cannes, and it's this huge. So, I mean,
I'm presuming she was late because she's a woman, right?
Well,
that's the big deal, right? Because if a male CEO was 2 hours
right, I mean,
late,
it's never made headlines before when a male CEO is. I even looked. I was like, when's the last time the media covered when a male CEO when any other CEO was late for a meeting?
Yeah, I don't remember a time. Not that I interface with him a lot, but in like company meetings and stuff, I don't remember a time when our CEO was on time. So
yeah.
Anyway, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's just not. I mean, like it's a non-issue for everyone else. So like people are. Some people say it's just another thing that Yahoo is just out of touch with. Because she's trying to re-establish Yahoo, and that makes it a bad thing. But I mean, you get down to the bottom of this article, and it's just like it is. It's the double standard, right? Like you would never hear about this if it was a male. Yeah. It would just be like, oh, he must have been blah blah blah. It wouldn't have been asked about. It wouldn't have been.
No, yeah, there would not even be anything, right? No,
right.
In fact, everyone would be afraid of talking about it because, not afraid, but like it's just something that.
It's like taboo, or it's just like it is what it is. Like boys will be boys, right?
He's allowed to do that. Yep, he's the
And
CEO.
on the other end, it's just like, oh, it's a woman. She must be tired because she, or whatever. And it's just, it wouldn't even be talked about if it was the other way. Just a double standard.
Well, and I don't know if she still qualifies as a new mom. I mean, I know she had a kid.
She has a young kid. I mean, it's hard work,
and
still on the other end, as a mom looking at I mean, non-business related, or actually, yes, even as an entrepreneur, I do, like I looked at it and I was like, something's got to give. Like that's just life with anybody, right? It's just it's just looked upon differently for women than it is for men, and it's that old deal of. The things are changing, even for parents in general, right? Like that it's not acceptable for a father to be gone, 80 hours a week either. Like it's just like, I mean, that's the old adage. Not that it's not acceptable, but that's changing in our minds on what the presence of both parents in the child's life means, and joint parenting, and people less and less want those jobs where it's just like, okay, I'm working for what? I'm going to miss my entire, the important things in life, and people don't want that anymore, right? So, yes, something has to give, but it's just insane that this is in the media. So, vice versa.
Well, yeah, and so, I mean, we're at a point now in society where, yes, women can totally be CEOs. I mean, Marissa Mayer certainly isn't the only one now, right? GM and a number of HP, like a number of big companies have had female CEOs, but they have to be perfect, right? Like, yeah, they're allowed to be CEO, but you have to be absolutely perfect. Whereas any old schmuck male can be a CEO, and that's fine.
Yeah, and it
And they
totally.
can be total, delinquents, or
Yes.
and it doesn't matter. Okay, well,
Because it's like the boys' club, right? Like, oh,
yeah,
it's like, oh, it must have been out, it's out playing around a goal, and it doesn't matter why you're late, right? It's just that you're you're late and has nothing to do with, yeah. So,
and was the story? I mean, was that the crux of the story? Was the double standard, or was it like?
yeah, it ended up being that, and and that is basically what it comes down to, just the different views, right? Like, so there, it started off with people complaining, being like, this is so.
What's that?
So it seems she kept a room full of important advertising executives whom she hoped to woo as Yahoo's client, waiting for
Okay.
nearly 2 hours in a fancy Cane's restaurant in France last week.
Okay, so sorry, it's Cannes, not
Cannes,
Canes.
sorry. Cannes.
As in the Cannes Film Festival. But okay, yeah, good.
Okay, yes.
Um, yeah, so okay, so it wasn't totally inconsequential, like a weekly debrief meeting of internal employees. It was okay, it was a thing, right? It was an important meeting of external people who could bring money into the company,
Yeah, and
right?
so that's what it starts
Customers.
off at, and then I was like, oh, well, that's not good, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's not good anyway, especially when you're trying to revive a company, right? Like that, like
yeah.
Yahoo, like she's trying to do with Yahoo. But then, and then later, they interview other people that are just like, well, this is the doubles. This is
Yeah.
the way it's being handled, right, in the media and what have you. Like, who knows how Yahoo handled this with those executives, and all of that would have been done. They handled it back and forth instead of making it this whole circus that it is now.
Sure. Yeah.
Right on, go for it.
Okay. So, there's this thing going on called the World Cup these days, and it was funny because I picked the story because we had an offline conversation about it, about soccer, sort of in general, the other day. We didn't get to watch the game, so the article is about mainly. I mean, it spawns from the U.S. Portugal game, right, where we tied because that's what you do in soccer. You tie. I think 2-2, and we didn't get to watch it because it was only on ESPN. So that's maybe a whole nother story for another time on network television or cable television and that whole scheme. But so I was following it on Google, sort of, just be refreshing. You could, I didn't know that you could do that. Like type in U.S. Portugal into Google, and it would bring you like a little score. Like your screen changes. It's still Google, but it has like a little score tracking and like where the ball is on the field and when people get a yellow card or whatever. And so I was kind of able to mainly just track the score there.
They do
But
that with baseball as well. You can see the little dot
yeah,
move around the
and,
diamond.
and football too. Yeah, so I guess it's a thing, and that was cool. But apparently we weren't the only ones paying attention, right? And Sunday's thrilling and frustrating World Cup match between the U.S. and Portugal drew an average of 24.7 million viewers. Of course, just in the U.S., according to Nielsen. Um, that's a result that puts the game above the recent NBA Finals. So we're living in a world when a soccer match in which we played to a draw got higher uh, ratings than the NBA Finals, that is the championship game, like the Super Bowl of basketball, right? Um, so it's just interesting, right? So this resurgence of soccer, and it's interesting. The story has a little poll, how popular is soccer in the U.S. And the predominant answer to the poll is it's not, but the World Cup is, right? So we don't watch soccer on a yearly basis, right? We watch it on a quadrennial basis, right? Every
Mm-hmm.
4 years, we watch the World Cup like we watch the Olympics because it's a show, and I think it's ABC or ESPN who paid how many billions of dollars for the rights. It's their job to make us watch it, right? Because that's the only way they get their money. But I thought it was interesting. Like, so we were interested, right? We were following the game. They say that so now with that draw result, I guess it's us and Germany at the top of the thing, and there's basically one game left between us and Germany, and they're expecting that to be even bigger, right? Because of where we are, and it's a possibility of us advancing to the next round. And of course, even if we lose, then maybe we still advance. I know that's the soccer scorekeeping thing that they do, but I just thought it was interesting. They have sort of another chart in there about audiences and perspective to everything. So, what's the most watched sporting event ever? What do you think? Take a guess. Not like a specific one, but just like, is it NHL, NBA, baseball, football, soccer, what?
And we're just talking about the United States, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's like the world, that's easy. The United States, most watched ever. I'm gonna have to go with like the last big Olympics that was like the 1980s.
No. So you don't need a specific. They don't break it down to specifics, but they say the London Olympics, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can say that's your guess. So the London Olympics got a 33.6 rating. Our listeners are going to be really schooled up on TV ratings after keep a couple episodes, and that is second. So you got the second place one. The first being, of course, the NFL championship or Super Bowl.
I was thinking that, but I was thinking specifically, older Olympics where everybody used to watch, right? Like
yeah. So one small aside here, I love how the chart has to say NFL championship because they're not allowed to use the word Super Bowl. That's just awesome. Well, not in a good way awesome. That's in a kind of sad way awesome. We can't put Super Bowl on our chart because we'll get sued. So it's NFL championship. So I told you the London Olympics was a 33.6 rating, and that's the number 2. The NFL championship got a 108.7 rating.
Wow. Yeah.
So 108.7
like the next closest
down
thing.
to 33 is the bars. Here, I'll show you with my hands if you're watching on the stream there. And then after the London Olympics was the NBA finals, and then just any old average NFL game is the fourth. Any game, pick any average football game is the fourth most watched. Then the baseball championship. I guess they can't use World Series either. Maybe we can't either. But anyway, the MLB championship after that. Then the U.S. and Ghana game at got an 11.1. So, okay, so they don't have this most recent game on there, but it basically would be this most recent game of the U.S. versus Portugal would come in third. So it'd be in the Super Bowl, the London Olympics, and then this game that just happened.
Right on.
Yeah, so that's and so then your average Major League Soccer playoff game. So not an average game, but when it actually matters, like an MLS playoff game gets a 0.32 rating.
Yeah. But that's ML. I mean, that's not. I've always been kind of jealous how other countries treat their soccer team. I mean, there's like this huge nationalism. It's kind of like the way that the Olympics used to be, but like for a professional sport, right? Where it's just the entire country shuts down to watch their teams play, right? Like it's just, and it's not just for championships. It's for like when the World Cup is happening, right? It's just like no one's doing anything but in entire nations, and we've never really been like that, just because we have all these other, we love American football and we love baseball. I mean, we just have kind of divided, and then we're such a big nation. We have all the states, so people have more pride for their state teams usually.
Their local teams.
Like right. I mean, so it gets that passion and fervor gets kind of divided up, and it's nice to see people pull together. I mean, I have friends from Portugal. There was a large group of kids in my high school that went to Portugal, or were from Portugal, And it was interesting seeing them post on on Facebook about the game, and they're like, they were excited for the USA to pull through, and they're like, but it was fun to watch, and it's kind of the beauty of our nation where you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, but it's good to see people get behind a national team for something that actually plays other teams from around the world, unlike our World Series or Super Bowl.
So let's talk about what we were talking about the other day, which was that the reason why soccer may be more popular these days, and the reason why one single game gets a 24.7 rating, is that our generation, your and our generation, was raised on soccer. We're the first generation. Like, our parents did not play soccer, had no idea, could care less about soccer. They did not grow up with soccer. Maybe later in life, right, with Pele and sort of that. That's our parents' generation. And then we were the first ones that, as like tiny kids, started playing soccer, because that's what, like, soccer moms, right? The soccer moms were our moms, right? And then down. And so that maybe that's the reason why soccer today is more popular, because the 18 to 40-year-olds all played soccer when they were kids, and maybe they only played it in elementary school and junior high, and then that was it. But still, they understand, right? They have some concept or grasp or connection to the game because they played it, and that maybe that's why it's more popular. And then there was interesting. Like, one of the poll options on the poll was, it's grown with America's immigrant community, and I think there's probably something to that, right? As we get immigrants into America, or as the immigrants who are here now have children and families, and they grow. Now we're into second and third generation of immigrants, and especially Latino, right? They're big soccer fans.
Yeah. And so it is interesting to me, because you grew up on the West Coast and I grew up in the Northeast, and soccer was not, as I was a kid. I mean, my mom was a soccer mom, but it was for my sister, who's 8 years younger than I am. It was never available for me growing up. But when I did go to high school, and there were other people who had first generation parents from Portugal and Brazil and some of these different places, it was introduced to the people who were first generations here in high school. Like, they played soccer, and it's just been over and over introduced. But it is interesting to me that how there is a difference there on the lines. And like my cousins who grew up in California, they played soccer, their kids play soccer, and they're very, very, I mean, like, my family's been here since since the early 1800s, right? So it's just, they're very, very much like just here and in the culture. But it's interesting to see how different places you grow up, and how it's being more accepted, and the more people come from other countries, the more it's just the melting pot, and it's pretty, like, melting pots.
So there we go.
Right on. So it's Wednesday, so I guess I'm on the woman kick, and I found, fired up by by the other article, I found an article that the vice president of Facebook in Europe, and she just got published in an article that says, basically, we need to change the language surrounding women as CEOs and women in charge. And she says, when I got my post at Facebook, and she doesn't mean post like online. When I got my post on Facebook, it was all about how I was a mother of 4 and had won the position, alongside pictures of my wedding.
Like a contest. Yeah,
nice. Like she had won her position alongside pictures of my wedding. She said, noting that the male executives hired at the same exact time came under no such scrutiny. Reports also said she she insisted on working part-time when in fact she was working a typical 5-day week, right? Just with a flexible thing. And she goes into the time thing on how we need to really, and this is in Europe, right? So like,
Yeah, where they're by all accounts ahead of us in this aspect.
right.
But
And it's just it's a really well written article. And she said, I was never defined by my working hours. I was defined by what I produced. That is what we need. That's what we need, and we need to be respectful of the best way people work. I think businesses have to think about the best way to retain talent. And this is something that's, I mean, this is not gender, this is not gender related, right? I mean, people work better doing different things, and I think there is that bias of being like, oh, well, you need to take care of your kids and your family or whatever, so you need more time off. And it's like, no, I mean, people produce more when when they're happier, or when they're working from home, or wherever it is that they want to work. Some people produce better going into the office, right? But and it's not, that whole part of it, it's not a gender thing. This is like for everyone, and it's, you can't just be like, well, I have kids, so I need, and it's not like that. It's just what will make you the best possible employee or owner that you can possibly be, and it's feeling that you're getting enough, you're making enough time for everything, or getting to do it your way, and what you produce is what it should be measured, not whether you're in at 8, or you're in at 6 and out at 10 at night, and I did that for a long time in New York, where you're just like total workaholic, and I just get into something and thought that that's the way it needs to be. And there's a difference between working smart and and working hard. I love, you gotta hustle no matter what you're gonna do. You have to put in the work, but if it's on your own terms, it just comes, it's gonna be better, and that's whether you work for a company or you work for yourself. So it's just interesting. I mean, all of this, and the language does need to change basically worldwide, and Western Europe and here there are much more opportunities for women than there are in a lot of other places. Right? I mean, there's no doubt about that. But if we're going to be at the forefront, then it needs to just be like put out there, like, look, it's the same with actresses, right? Who get on the red carpet. It's just, what do you ask? Oh, what, you're when are you going to have kids? Who are you dating? Who are you, who are you, whatever. And like, you don't ask Sir Anthony Hopkins that, right? Like, that's never asked, right? Like, it's just not the case. So it's just very, the double standard. And only, I mean, I'm not trying to complain about it. It just needs to be, the more we talk about it, the more things will change, and more people just get the view that it's just like, we're just people, and it doesn't matter what we look like. Innately, we all kind of want the same things,
Well, yeah, it's interesting. It reminded me of the conversation we had about like women in politics, and how, if more than 51% of voters are female now, which they are, how women don't just all get together and just elect a slate of all women, why there aren't just all women candidates, or all women in politics, in positions. And we talked in that conversation, we talked about how it's because even amongst women, they don't vote all for themselves, right? Women don't do that. They're like, oh, well, I'm going to vote for her just because.
No, and actually, there's a huge thing. I mean, I grew up in New York, where they're like in a very blue collar town, and it's just like anti-feminism is very, very strong there. Like, if you're like, oh, what are you, like, trying to, people are against it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So even in the context, now transfer that over to the context of this article of, and her picture with like wedding and stuff. I wonder if, I have to wonder from the male perspective, because I don't know, is that what women are interested in their CEOs, right? Do they want to, are women holding other women to the same double standard, right? In
Oh,
that that's
yes.
like,
I
is
think
she gonna
yes.
have kids? Oh, how many kids does she have? Oh, what is she wearing? Oh, she those kind of things that it's women like in the media, women in the job world in corporate America. The women are driving this as much as the men
I
are. It's
totally,
like a
yes.
societal problem. It's
We
not
don't have
all
to
men
wonder.
going,
No,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
And that's not what I mean. I don't think, and see, that's a thing. We automatically think we go to these pollers and be like, oh, it's men that are doing this and setting up the language, and it's
Not
not. I
anymore.
mean,
Too many
it's
women in the workplace now. You could have said that back in the all the way up
and
to
I
probably the
mean,
80s, but
seriously, you see this huge influx of opportunity, realistically, in social media. I mean, it's just in general, women are good at bringing communities together and the social part of things. So it's no wonder that women are becoming more and more at the forefront of social media things. Um, but
yeah, that
yes,
stands to reason.
you're yeah, and you're part of the. I mean, we're part of the language just as much. I mean, it's just for everybody. The language needs to change. The attitudes need to change, and the only way we can do it is just kind of working together. It's not like there's like some, guy at the top with a monocle and a top hat, and he's just like, the Monopoly man, and he's just
Yeah.
like, "Mwah," like this is the way it's gonna be, and it's not, that. It's not all men, and it's not all women. It's just something. It's just like collectively, we need to move conversations into a place where
Yeah,
we look
and
at somebody by what they make, what they're producing for the world, what they're changing, what they're doing, if they're taking actions to do whatever it is that they do,
yeah, and I have to hope, and I can only hope because I haven't seen, I've never seen any information or studies or anything about this, but I hope that when women do get to, I mean, obviously that ultimate CEO level, or even higher up in any kind of managerial position, that they're bringing in more women, right? That
hmm
because I've never seen that. I find that shocking. So if anybody's listening and knows or has seen
yeah.
statistics on when a woman becomes CEO, especially like when they take over from a man to a woman CEO, do hiring rates of women in that company increase? I mean, do they get and retain more female employees just by virtue of that there's a woman that's
Mm.
CEO? I
That'd be
don't know.
interesting.
I've never seen
I'm gonna
anything
I'm
that
gonna
says
say I
that,
doubt
but
it, but
yeah, right. But why
yeah.
not? I mean that. Yeah. So, and I'm talking like not, oh, we're all women. I'm only hiring women now.
Mm.
No, I'm saying, if it's 18% women before, can we bump that up to like 25% or, somewhere more akin to the natural population of the country?
Yeah,
But anyway, so
agreed.
yeah,
Right on.
we'll see. All right. So following right up with the World Cup soccer, my next article is want your kids to ace school? Good motor skills may help. So this is by Nancy Shute on NPR, and it basically talks about that. So I love it. It starts out at the beginning that there's no lack of evidence that children are getting fatter and weaker. Period. That's that's the opening line. I like that, Nancy. Yeah. So our fat, weak kids are also doing worse in school.
Mhm.
So you hear a lot of articles about, yeah, you hear them kind of separately, right? And that's why I picked this article. It's I think the first time I've seen them joined together. That you hear the headlines, kids are getting fat.
Mhm.
Americans, not just kids, but Americans are getting fatter and fatter. And then you hear the other side of the articles that are kids are doing worse and worse in school, right? Well, this one kind of joins them together and says at least part, and maybe a large part of the reason why they're doing worse in school as a group is that they're out of shape. And out of shape students, and this is according to studies, a couple of studies that they cite in the article, is because so the more fit a student is, the better they tend to do
Mm.
grades wise. And in particular, though, but fitness can mean a bunch of different things, right? You just say not fat. It's actually velocity and coordination in combination. So that's what they define motor skills as.
Mhm.
velocity, and coordination in combination. And they test that, or they tested it in the study with a shuttle run. So, this is one of the things they do in like the combine in football I've seen, but it's basically, like you run 10 yards, pick up a block, turn around and bring it back and set it down, right? And you do that, like how fast can you run, pick up something, turn around, run back and put it down, and like repeat that. So it's a certain, okay, so they say like you can generalize just general fitness level, your kids will do better in school. And then if you concentrate on this specific skill set of motor skills, that they do even better than the ones who are just generally, like, if they're runners or something and they have cardiovascular fitness. Now, if you do a bunch of shuttle runs every day, you will get cardiovascular fitness as well, that as a sort of offshoot of that. But it was that specific, like, kids who could do that test, that shuttle run faster, had better grades. So they talk about so of course they have to mention that PE and physical activity is like being weeded out of schools, like they're getting rid of PE teachers, and oh no, you're here to learn. Sit down in that chair for 8 hours while we shoot things into your brain, and that's just it's compounding the problem, right? So they're fat at home, right? And then they come to school, and whereas they used to at least get some PE and every day, because like recess, yeah, you can hope that they run around and chase each other at recess, but they don't have to, right? They can just sit.
Yeah, if they're already in the mode of being a sitter, right?
Yeah, recess is largely like a smoke break for the teachers or whatever. Like they just like, oh, you have an hour where you're just gonna go do this.
No, and most of the learning happens. No, I wouldn't even say that, just because I mean they have to like sit there and watch 200 kids playing around and make sure that nobody. So
yeah, well, right. So the increased blood flow, if you talk about like technically why this happens, is increased blood flow due to aerobic fitness can make a happier brain, and other studies have found that motor skills relate to memory, attention, and academic performance. So it's not just and that also correlates into better grades, right? If you're paying attention, then you have a better chance of learning the material. If your brain is oxygenated and I guess what they call happier, then it's going to remember the things that you paid attention to, and those two things together are going to lead to better grades, right? So you get the test in front of you, you remember the questions, you remember what you learned because you were paying attention, because you had this, fitness. And it goes. I feel like it goes directly into what I talked about yesterday when I did my whole game theme, right? And we talked about these major league gamers, the guys at the top 0.01% are all in shape, right? They're not fat. They're not weak, right? And this is exactly what I'm talking about. That they have to be able to have attention, remember the strategies and all the things that go into playing these games, and they can't do that if their brain isn't is tired or is out of shape, basically, if their bodies are out of shape. So
I know. Yeah, no, and it's super cool. And I think it was, well, gosh, it must have been like 6 years ago. We watched a special on reforming education and how exercise in the morning, like, truly, I mean, for high school students, and they say one of the huge factors in our education system, we haven't been able to breach that like socioeconomic part of it, right? So and this woman took this really poverty-stricken area right outside of Boston, and she took this high school and she completely reformed it. And one of the things was getting the kids can choose to, they can get a shorter day if they come in super early in the morning and do their workout, and then their math, and then they do math right afterwards, and math scores just totally soared. And these are high school students who are already, I mean, when you're at high school level and you haven't had anything before, it's really hard to to be like, okay, we're gonna up the test scores, and when somebody doesn't have the fundamentals or whatever, and just like our brain capacity is so awesome, and when you work out, and
Yeah, and it's funny because I mean I've noticed this personally, even at my age, right? When I run in the morning, yeah, my body is tired and like I'm maybe a little bit sore, but my brain isn't, right? So
clearer. Hmm.
yeah, and so that obviously has to make a class. Think about a classroom of kids that are all just a little bit tired, like physically, right? Like not mentally. They're awake mentally, but they're calmed down
Hmm.
physically. They're not fidgeting. They're not feeling like they want to get up and run around because you've tired them out a little bit. A couple jumping jacks, some running in place. It doesn't have to be this like huge boot camp experience, right? Like a
Yeah,
walk in the morning
whatever, make them
is
plank.
enough.
Like if you
Yeah,
can't get
right.
out of the classroom, make them plank.
Yeah,
And
like
it is
you can
it's
do
an
jumping
issue. I mean,
jacks anywhere, and
it's
it
an
makes
issue
it easier
for,
for the
yeah,
teachers.
and especially young kids. Like you can't.
Yeah,
I mean, we just expect kindergarten and first graders and second graders to sit at a desk for 8 hours, and
yeah,
or if it's raining out, watch a movie, and there's no gym and there's no recess, and it's, people say like the reset. What's your favorite part of the day? The reset. They learn so much then, and if we did it in the morning, like it would just be a better class to have to take care of. If you have to
yep,
have 30 kids in your class that you're going, I mean, wouldn't it be better if they were just a little bit tuckered out, but
yep.
more focused, right? So,
That's what,
yep.
and the studies are there to prove it. So we're not just speculating at this point. It's
No, I mean, yeah, there's tons and tons of information on it. So,
yep.
right on. So, my last story is why time slows down when we're afraid, speeds up as we age, and gets warped on vacation. And I love this because we've I have a terrible sense of time. Like it's just it's part of who I am. I get it from my dad, and I just I just do, like, and I'll get lost in something, and if I'm wrapped up in something, I just have no idea how much time, or I always think I have more time than I really do, and it's something I am very aware of, and I need to, and it is a very relative thing, people's sense of time. So I'm starting to build in notifications into my Google
Yeah,
Calendar, and
yeah,
I'm starting to do things. It's only taken 40 years, but that I actually, for things that I sign up for or events, and they actually show up on my phone from my calendar, and putting those all
yeah,
together and knowing what your weaknesses are. But I've always felt that it's such a personal thing how we perceive time, and it's interested me and how kids see, and we've
yeah.
spoken
It's
about
not
this
a
a lot,
it's not
right?
a it's not a personal thing, but it is. You're right. Like it. Oh, I can talk about time dilation. I mean, it's uh, yeah. As you age, right? So like, and we see this even the difference between our 7 and 5 year olds, right?
Hmm.
Like to Atlas, the 5 year old, if you like tomorrow, you might as well say next year,
Hmm.
right? In fact, driving him to Kuksuwan this morning, he they, I will never understand these guys being our two kids obsession with Halloween. Like Halloween, I don't know, listeners, if you it's like
Every
the end all
day.
be all. I feel like you could almost put Halloween up against Christmas as like maybe the
Every
number
day.
one
No, it's
holiday.
talked about
'Cause
every day what
what
they're
are we
going to do
gonna
for
wear?
Halloween.
Every time we walk to the pool or we're walking in the morning or I'm driving him, so like, let's talk about what we're going to be for Halloween. I'm like, and he asked, my point is, he asked, when is Halloween? And I said, well, Halloween is, it's not for another, like 9 months, or I guess in my head, right? See, I'm doing the opposite. Like oh no, it's actually quite sooner than that. And he's like, oh, so I think I said it's not for a whole bunch of months. And he's like, oh, so that's like years and years, right? And that's the exact translation actually on both ends, because I think I said it was like 9 months and it really was only like I just said 6. It's 4 months, right?
Hmm.
October is 4 months past June. Um,
Wow.
Math for the win. And so I'm saying 9 months and it's really 4 months, right? And that's how old people older people like myself, and he heard 9 months, and in his 5-year-old brain translated that to years and years, and that little snippet right there of life that I just experienced is time dilation on both sides. So when you're a kid, a day seems like a year. And then you get older and you're a teenager and a day seems like a month. And then you're 20 and a day seems like a week. And it keeps going until it flips. I guess at some point, middle age, a day is a day, right? And then as you get older, it starts to get on the other side. So things that happened a week ago seem like they just happened yesterday. And things that happened a month ago seem like they just happened, yesterday and a year ago. And so that's how this is the argument for why, here's one of the drawbacks of us increasing our age, like increasing lifespan, or if you were to live forever, like if you ever want to debunk a vampire movie or something where like somebody lives forever, they can't. Well, physically they could probably live forever, but mentally they would go insane because the time dilation works against you, as like things that happened 1,000 years ago would feel like yesterday, but so would the things that happened yesterday, right? It's like at a certain point, your brain, at least from what we understand of the brain, having no actual knowledge of this. But like my grandmother, who lived to be 103, like you saw this, she talked about things that happened 40 years ago, like they happened yesterday, right?
Yeah, and it was
where she remembered experiences, it was like yesterday.
Yeah. And that was a very interesting experience so we had 0 to 102 in the house, right? Like, and daily routines on how the different, just the span of 100 years, how we deal with stuff. But she would talk about, things like everything moved so fast for her because
a day goes by like that, right? So a day to her, it's like a minute, or you wake up and your day, and then you go to bed. Like your day is over before you know it, right? Because when you're that old, things happen so fast. That's the part of the time dilation, right? Probably the more pressing part. Whereas if you told my grandmother and my son to wait a minute, it meant two completely different things, right? My son, you might as well have told him to wait till the end of the day, and my grandmother, well, the minute already just happened, right? It's done. So, that's. And go to your point of having problems with time. So I'm the opposite, right? I'm your mirror of that. So you have a problem with time on the keeping track of it and losing track of time, I guess I should say. And I have the opposite problem, but also to a detriment to some degree of I'm too time conscious, right?
Yes, where you'll sit in the car for 15 minutes with the kids before we have to leave, and then it drives me crazy.
I get physical, it impacts me worrying about being late. Now, I will say that my one caveat or excuse is that my 6 years in the Marine Corps, they were just so hell bent on you being places at certain times, and they enacted punishments if you, in fact, not on time, early, right? Everywhere you went,
15 minutes
early, and if you were not early. Forget about on time. If you were not early, punishments ensued. And so I lived the period of my life where I was indoctrinated. To be fair, I had this already before that. Always wore a watch as a kid, as long as I can remember, had a watch on, and was at places. And so it sucks because I end up waiting. I'm early all the time. And most people, a lot of the people in my life, not are late, and so not only is there like a 5-minute gap where I'm early, 5 minutes early, I'm 5 minutes early, and the other person is 5 minutes late. So I'm like 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes that I end up waiting, and it sucks. And I don't know how to stop myself. I try not worry about things because I worry about getting to a place on time, get there early, and then. Or I worry about getting to a place on time, wait for you, we leave because we're going to go someplace together, so we leave late, and we get there and it's okay. It didn't matter, right? Yes.
And this is for most things, that is the way it is. And I discovered that a long time ago, and just especially, it's just something that, it'll kill you if you worry about it. Yeah.
Now that being said, I mean, so I think we both like you.
We can learn from each other, right?
Time,
Yes. Yes.
and I can work on not worrying about it as much. And luckily, we're in a world like you kind of mentioned, but there are tools out there, right? Timers and things. I mean, I have a. I should save it for one of my tips, or maybe I'll do it as a recommendation later this week. But I have an add-on to Chrome, my Chrome browser, where all I have to do is click up in the address bar and type 30. So I do like TM space that tells it to wake up and that I'm doing a timer. So I do TM space 5M like 5 minutes or 2H for 2 hours space wake up or something. And basically and I hit enter, and that sets a timer in my browser, and it'll play a sound, and it'll actually talks to me, and it says like time to do this, or go to bed or whatever. So just there we have tools everywhere. My phone with a little timer thing, and so yeah, there are ways to kind of that'll like close your browser, right? Like if you've been on Facebook for too long or something, that'll So anyway, there's lots of technologies out there, apps and things that can help you get a handle on that.
Yeah, and that's on our personal level. But this article is really, really good, and they get into it why we feel time move differently through different events, right? Like,
sure.
So if you're like within already being, less of the how we do our day-to-day stuff, but there's a really cool old chart when the mind of mind time, and all this I'll post, but they say it is clear that however the brain counts time, it has systems that is very a system that is very flexible. It takes into account factors like emotions, absorption, expectation, the demand of a task, and even the temperature. The precise sense we are using also makes a difference. An auditory event appears longer than a visual one. Yet somehow the experience of time created by the mind feels very real, so real that we feel we know what to expect from it and are perpetually surprised whenever it confuses us by warping. And it's just, it's really, really cool article with different quotes from different scientists and artists and people, and how we haven't really looked at time. I remember seeing something on how physically, this is like mathematically, time moves differently in different patches. Like you can step into a spot, in like a black hole of time, and be like, time moves faster right here than it does right here, and it's just amazing to me.
Well, you're describing the conversation I had with our other child, Abby, when we discussed, I think it was on our walking to the pool, and I think she had started lamenting that like we never stay at the pool long enough, right? Or that every time we get to the pool, we have to leave right away. And I said, so I introduced her to the phrase "time flies when you're having fun," and yeah, I love that now she's getting to that age where we can actually have these kind of discussions. She's old, cognitively enough aware to grasp it. She's like, yeah, it does. And so, like, we talked about when we go someplace like a party or the pool, if we stay at the pool for an hour, it doesn't seem like an hour to her, right? It seems like 5 minutes because everything goes, she gets in and she's in the moment. And if you're having fun doing something, it's over before you know it. And conversely, when I ask her to clean her room or clean anything, frankly, even if it takes her 5 minutes to just touch up the room, it's like you had locked her in there for a week. I mean, I'm saying this to her, and she is wholeheartedly agreeing. Like, you're right, Daddy. That's 7 years old. She's able to grasp this concept that, when you're doing something that's fun, it never, time just goes by instantly. And when you're doing something that is not fun, it takes forever. And that's the trick to doing a lot of things, like cleaning, exercising, any of the things, right? If you can trick your mind into thinking it's fun, that's why a lot of these why exercise video games are so cool, right? Because you're just playing a game. You don't know that, like, okay, get your shoes on, hit the road, and start running down a trail for umpteen miles. You're in a game. There's lights and your points and things like that, and before you know it, you're that. Or even I've talked about recently. When I go in the pool, even I'm not swimming laps or anything, but just swimming around and playing with the kids and stuff, it is a workout. Like, it's tiring, but you're having fun, right? But you've tricked your brain and say, oh, I have to hit go on the treadmill and run for till it hits a certain time, right, or a certain distance or something, and it's a chore. Ways to make that fun or better.
Yeah, and there's something to be said too. Like, it's not just not. I mean, it's not only fun things that time goes by quickly. I mean, it can be hard. It can be hard work, but as long as it's gratifying mentally, and I'm getting the kids to see that as well, like
Sure.
satisfaction of something, and how you think about it is changes on whether it drags or not, and it's not.
That's true, and that's a good point.
Work is not always. I mean, it's not. It doesn't have to be like this one thing of just playing, but like if you like programming, right, or design or
no. The example I was going to use was dishwashing, right? So once upon a time, I was a dishwasher at a restaurant, and I encountered this, right? So I found that the absolute worst times of that job where there were no dishes to wash, and I was basically just sitting around in a hot, steamy room, like a little dishwashing room, and just like waiting or figuring out what to do. I couldn't go out to the front, right? Like, I'm covered in, like, they had a lot of shrimp and, like, anyway, I'm dirty dishes and stuff, right? Dirt, and I had to wear the all whites. It was a fancy restaurant, and I couldn't really leave because so the times when it was just like when the restaurant was busy, the night just flew by because I had nothing to think about except washing the next set of dishes and cycling it through and putting them back, because by the time I did that, oh, here comes another one, and just getting it through, and then before I knew it, boom, the last person was gone, and it was the last load of dishes, and I was done. And so A, that made the night go by very fast. B, I got tips, or I got a portion of the tips. So the busier the restaurant was, so not only did the night fly by, but at the end of the night, I got physically rewarded with, like, this big pile of cash. And on nights, so compare that to the nights when it wasn't busy, and I basically sat around and waited and couldn't really do anything or go anywhere. And at the end of my 8 hours of doing that, here's $1.50 from the 3 people we had. So yeah, that's the
rewards. It's not always it's not always like games, right? It's like hard work can be like that as well.
Yep. But it made it go by faster. And I've worked McDonald's, I've worked a lot of jobs where if the job is unpleasant, oftentimes the best case scenario is just being so busy that you do not have time to think about it. Or really, the worst case scenario is being in a job you hate and just having to sit there and think about it.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing else to do. Everything is cleaned, all the cups are stocked, and the food, and you're just waiting for people to come in and mess with your life. But at least you would have some sort of interaction to do. But yeah, so that's
right on.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd love to hear how other people think about what they're doing, if they've noticed what they're doing when time really, really flies for them. Like, it's a good way to measure what you really enjoy to do if you're having a hard time moving through creatively or whatever. So, like, just see what moves slowly, or and even if you have kids, like, just taking note of what they think goes by fast and what they think goes by slow. So
yeah. All right, my final story comes from Engadget, where Chris Velasco talks.
Sorry, I just wonder, I'm gonna have to pause just in case it's Atlas's school.
Yep.
Hello? Hello? Hi, Lisa? Yes. Here, I'm gonna call you back. I'm on a call right now, but I'll call you back, okay? Okay. Sorry, I didn't know whether that was the school or
Sure.
not.
No,
I
that's
wouldn't
fine.
have. Definitely
Yep.
wouldn't have.
Okay.
Yes,
So
your tool or story.
my last story is a company called Cruise, which aims to make a self-driving car out of the one you already own.
Sorry. Go ahead. Start again. I'm gonna just turn this off.
Yeah, how about that? So a company named Cruise is aiming to make a self-driving car out of the one you already own. We've talked about self-driving cars before. I think we've sufficiently conveyed at least my love of the idea of a self-driving car, and then I cannot wait. I do not like to drive. Self-drive. If I live my life long enough to realize, before I die, drive in a car that just drives itself and takes me where I want to go, I will be happy. But of course, the proposition has always been, well, you're gonna, just like electric vehicles, right? You're gonna have to buy a new car. Like your next car that you buy will be a self-driving model of car. But what if you didn't have to do that? What if you could just buy a kit?
Program your car,
like
yes.
Well, yeah. Like you put a big fancy stereo in your car, or an in-dash GPS, or the TVs, right? The TVs in the car. You got one of those, listeners? What if
the console?
Which I see total bundling going on here, right? So because you want to get when you buy the self-driving car package, you're going to want to have TVs because you'll be able to look at something while the car is driving, right? So yeah, Cruise is a company that is working on this kit that basically would install on your car and turn it into a self-driving car. It's got a sensor package for the top, sits on the roof, because that's how most of these things work with LiDAR or lasers and radar combo.
LiDAR.
So they can see things,
heard
right?
That word before.
So I'll read a little bit from the article here. Cruise's system is an awfully neat one. It combines a roof-mounted sensor array with a series of actuators that manipulate the wheel and pedals, right? Because that's the other thing that has to happen. So it basically has to attach to your steering wheel and the pedals to physically basically move them if it's going to retrofit this to a car. And then a computer lodged in your trunk sort of sits between the two things, the roof sensor and the actuators, and it chews on all the road data and issues commands to the control system. And of course, all of this is invisible to the person in the driver's seat. One touch of a button installed on the dash toggles the whole shebang on and off. So basically, he calls this basically Cruise Control Plus, which frankly, I think I've mentioned this when we talked about it before.
Yeah,
that's what I want, right? That's what I want.
So you can turn it on and off as you please, right? I mean, this solves the problem that we were talking about. Like, what if I want to go for a drive and actually drive, right?
Yeah. And so it is though more like cruise control right now. What they're working on. The Cruise system, remember Cruise is the name of the company, the Cruise system will maintain a set speed and steer to avoid obstacles, but you shouldn't plan on taking any naps in the backseat. So this isn't yet the,
it's intuitive
type in your destination and sit back and close your eyes and it's going to navigate you through the GPS. It's not doing that. So it is kind of more like cruise control in that, we drive to my parents' place in Tucson. Once we hit Highway 10, right, and the GPS says, drive on Highway 10 for the next 480 miles. Well, you know what? That's when you hit the button on this bad boy and you let Cruise just take you, right, and not have to worry about that. You're basically driving.
I just wonder how, line. I mean, it has to be super duper intuitive, right? Because people relax when they're like not so much. I mean, people fall asleep in the wheel when they're not supposed to, right? So, how intuitive is it that, can it handle a deer shooting out at you and know that there's a car next to you and, all these things, so.
Yeah, what happens, when you get to a stop, so does it, what happens when you get to one of those forks in the road where there's, no straight ahead and you have to go left or right? What does it do? Does it just stop? Or if it's like cruise control, where basically
it's not,
just go straight. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that's not the end of the bad news, unfortunately. Uh, if it all sounds too good to be true, it only works on Bay Area. That would be San Francisco Bay Area freeways, and it only works with Audi's most recent A4s and S4s for now, anyway.
Yeah, and I mean it's awesome that they're going this direction, right? Because you can just build it into. People love their cars.
Yeah.
Here in the United States, we love our cars, and they're very, very personality driven, and so if you can do that and you want to do that, it would be cool. They just need to get it probably a lot more intuitive.
Yeah, and so if you own an Audi A4 in the Bay Area, then this will cost you $10,000 to add to your car. So, the nice thing is that this is an early stages of this company and this product. It's going to get better, and it's not Google doing this, right? So, it's just yet another. It's the competition aspect, right? And that these
awesome.
these guys are all developing in a little bit different way and handling things a little bit different. And so one of two things will happen. Either the competition will push all the companies to innovate, or one company, Google, will buy Cruise and then have both technologies, right? And have it all.
Well, and merge them, right? Like and be able to do that on a bigger scale. So
and take Google's mapping aspect and the things that they're doing and put it into the Cruise system so that you can either buy a Google, and Google has said they don't want to make, they're never going to make, you're never going to buy a Google car, I guess what I'm saying. They're making the technology and proving it out, and then they'll sell it to Ford or something. And so Ford will make a car that uses Google's automated technology. So same thing, like being able to just buy this and tack it onto the car you already own and just let it go and have the ability, the flexibility to either drive yourself if that's what you want to do and you're in some sort of backcountry road, but also be like, oh boy, I'm stuck in Austin downtown traffic again. Button.
And that's the thing. I mean, traffic driving is so hard on the brain. It just is, like talking about the way time moves, right? Moves so much slower, and it's very hard to do because it's just stop and go and stop and go. If you can have something that does that
just handles it. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. I'm moving 5 miles an hour. That was this morning, right? It's just Austin traffic, and I'm not helping the car out anyway. Like if I was asleep, I wouldn't have been endangering anybody because nobody was moving anywhere. So to have a vehicle just be able to go, oh, okay, I see that the space in front of me has widened based on my radar, and I should just sort of inch forward or whatever, and just follow the car in front of me. And that's the other thing. Like once, this is going to be great, but then what really will be the breakthrough is when everyone is driving an automated car, because then they will network together, they will talk to each other, and you'll see a dramatic decrease in accidents and fatalities and all that stuff, because the cars will know where each other are around them and not just have to sense it by radar or something. And to think about a car 50 cars in front of you, seeing, oh, there's an accident there, and wirelessly transmitting it all the way back to your car so that you know to either reroute or do whatever, and having that kind of stuff happen. So, all right, that's the last of the stories. Who are we brought to you by today?
Today, brought to you by Photogger, and there's going to be a challenge next week, and you can check, if you're on Instagram, we'd love to follow you. Just do @Photogger, and the challenge will be a hashtag that I will post in our show notes, but it's a great little blog to take better pictures of your family or of your food or of whatever it is you like to take pictures of, or for business. I get a lot of people that ask where and how to take better pictures of products and what have you, and you can do it with everything from a DSLR, which up to a phone, and I use my phone camera more than anything else, and have basically some art pieces that I would like to show that come from my phone. So the possibilities are endless. So come on over to photogher.com or join us on Instagram. If you're on Instagram, just @Photogher or hashtag Photogher, PHOTOGHER. And we like hymns too, but it is. So Right on.
I follow you on Facebook, and I see all those just good pictures. And you're absolutely right about the product photos. Like nothing worse than going to especially a business's website,
It's a
and two things:
killer.
they either have no photos at all, which is probably the worst, maybe, or they have photos that are like grainy and just bad photos or whatever,
And the
right?
same goes for profile pictures, right? As
Yeah.
far as there's just the selfie where you can see your hands like right there, and the lighting's bad, and it's just if you can't afford to get a photographer to actually do that for you, there are tips and tricks to make a much better looking picture, and especially if you're trying to go into business or trying to get a job or trying to do anything, your social media presence is so important these days for pretty much everything. So yeah, that's the type of thing that we cover. So
All right. What is your first recommendation today?
my first, I'm going to let you go first because I just lost my train of thought.
All right, I will go first. So, since we just talked about the possibility of self-driving cars and also how great it is or that we take long road trips, my first recommendation is an app called Road Trip, ROADTRIP, all one word. And what it does is auto-create mixtape playlists based on your route. So one of the things that we do when and that we absolutely have to make sure when we're planning to take a long drive is that we have music. And I think I've talked before, like I like to have all the music on my phone. I have a kids playlist where I sort out the songs that are inappropriate or whatever, and we just kind of do shuffle if we're or random and let it go, right? This is cool because it actually you put in your destination, right? So you put in where you put in your route, and it actually plays music of like local musicians as you're driving through.
Cool.
So if you're driving through Austin, right, you'll hear Austin people, and yeah. So as you go through, it builds a playlist for you. So if you're into hearing different music, especially, right, it will mix everything up and just let you experience, like as you drive through a town, like, oh, this is Nirvana because you're in Seattle, or Jimi Hendrix or something. And I just think that's an interesting way because frankly it can, even though I'll have 50 songs on there. We on a long enough road trip, you're going to cycle through those, and you just want something different. And I think this would be a really fun, kind of cool way to, not only for us, but especially for the kids, to get them, because I always like to expose them to new music, different types of music, to do that. So it's free, like most of the apps I recommend, and lets you sort of build a playlist for yourself, mixtape based on where you're going.
Very awesome. So I actually have two. I have two screenshot capturers that I use. I have one that it's just called Awesome Screenshot.
Okay.
And it just has a little camera, and it's nice because you don't have to like go in and crop, or you don't. I mean, you can do that from their thing. It's just very slick and easy and very easy.
Is this for your phone or?
No, it's for your desk,
computer.
for your computer, and you probably can. I mean, your phone has a function that does that. Anyway, I mean, so does computer, but it's just like a nice thing to have in your bar if you are ancient like us and still use a desktop. But I really like it for capturing like slides or if there's just information that I want to have, and memes and things like that. And then I found that Google Drive also has one. I just found out about this one, and it'll just take a screenshot and send it right to your drive if you have Drive.
Dropbox will do this too.
Mm-hmm. So it's super nice if you do take webinars or have any reason that you'd like to or want to teach or anything like that. It's great to just get a quick screen capture, and it's called Awesome Screenshot. So that's my one.
Okay. Yeah, I have one more. So this is an app for Android, and it's called Aviate. And AV8 is an ever-changing Android home screen, which I guess, according to the headline, is now available to everyone. So these are really cool. I have another one called Everything Me, but AV8 kind of does the same thing. Actually, it does a little bit more, and I may switch to this. And what it does, AV8, is basically you install it and it replaces your home screen, and it automatically adjusts the icons and what you see on the screen based on like time of day,
Cool.
your calendar, your contacts, just so what you use the most. That's the thing. So here's what I love about Everything on Me. Um, I tend to run in the morning, and when I run, I do two things. I either listen to music or I listen to podcasts on my podcast app, Pocket Casts. So now, since I've installed that, whenever I turn on my phone or just unlock my phone in the morning, those are the first two apps that are just right there on the screen. It's like, okay, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. You probably want to use music or Pocket Casts, and they're just right there. I don't have to search for them. I don't have to. Yeah, I could just put them on my screen, but you can only put so many things on your home screen. And then it changes. So in the evening, for whatever reason, I use the timer a lot. So maybe it's the default. It has the little clock app up there because I use the timer, as we've talked about earlier. I either the stopwatch or the countdown timer. And so that's just automatically on there. And so if you use apps during different parts of the day, it automatically puts them up for you, and you don't have to search for them. It learns. And then AV8 does a couple other things, like your favorite contacts with just with a swipe from the home screen. It can track your sleeping habits. Okay, that's interesting. Multiple day-to-day tasks are also just a bit easier. You'll get commute times based on the weather,
Cool.
single-step conference calls, and alerts for big changes in the weather. So basically, it lets you fine-tune everything about your home screen and kind of make it easier. And it also looks nicer too, because it kind of basically clears out the home screen and only shows you the things that you want. And if you find yourself needing an app at a certain point that's not on there, and you search for it and you find it, it's going to try and then recommend that again. When you get in, the camera app and things like that. So AV8, AVIATE. Find it in the Google Play Store now.
Right on, right on. And my last recommendation is called I Am, and it's kind of like an Instagram, but it's based on where you are, and it's a lot more if you're we're a visual society, right? If you're into more artistic type pictures, but it's a lot less of the food pictures and selfies, and it's your stream gets generated by where you are and what you like. Like there's different by interest, right? So like if you're into like nature or landscape shots or cars or car photography, that's what will come up in your stream a lot more. And they have contests, and it's just a nice little place that I don't put like all my stuff like I do on. It's just used differently, and it's a really, really growing site, and it's connected to everything. You can bring in your Instagram pictures as well as send out to all your social media. So, but if you're into photography in any way, I would go and check it out. It's called I Am, and it has really cool filters, and it's free. And that's I, like as in EYE.
Oh, I see. I was like, why is it called I Am?
IEYEEM.com.
Nice.
I Am.
Link in the show notes, everyone.
Right on. So thank you so much for joining us. If you have anything to say about what we talked about today or any day, or have any questions for us, please contact us over at ourbreakfast.club, or we're on Facebook, Twitter, and everywhere, or just pop us an email at ask@ourbreakfast.club. And we'd love to hear from you, and thanks again for joining us. We had a really good time.
Yes, everyone. Have a good day.
Aloha.